Guys, I want to speak today about the power of authentic brotherhood. And so many guys have been hurt by men, whether it's your father who left the house or was abusive, your brother who neglected you, or simply other men in our lives who challenged us, diminished us, bullied us in high school because most of us men were never taught how to connect with our hearts and how to come from a place of generosity and authenticity. So, most guys go through their lives looking for intimacy and looking for healing and looking for connection with women. Think about it. Most men their best friends are women. Most men they cry with women. And yet, when we are around other men, we're oftentimes tougher and we are talking about sarcasm and we are looking at who's got more and who's more macho. And you know what that does is it actually segregates us and limits the amount of joy, amount of wealth, and amount of prosperity that we can experience as men. Why? Because we're only connecting with half of the earth's population from a space of authenticity, vulnerability, and connection. One of the greatest things that I ever experienced was being around other men who are heart centered, not competitive, and willing to open their hearts. In fact, I didn't know such a thing existed in the past. I thought that most men behave like most men that I had met. And it wasn't until I started to explore health, healing, consciousness, and men's communities that I started to realize that there's actually an entirely different type of male human being that exists out there that is not very common. And when we start to connect with men who have these certain behaviors that are very rare, what it does is it gives us a place of safety to really experiment with our authenticity, with our vulnerability, and with our opening of our emotions. Because when we are around men who are safe, who are not here to punish us, diminish us, and steal or just leave us hanging, what it gives us the capability to do is it gives us the capability to look inside ourselves and to sift through all the bullshit that we've been carrying as men. Being a part of a men's community has absolutely changed my life. I've gotten to be around men who are just as successful as me, if not more, just as joyful as me, if not more, just as sensitive as me, if not more. And what I've realized is that being around men like this can absolutely change the way that I run my business, that I connect with women, the way that I create and generate wealth, and the way that I interact with my own family. How many men do you know who, when things become uncertain or when they experience conflict, they resort to toughness? They resort to anger as a way, as a default mechanism. How many men do you know when things get tough, when they are in a space of conflict, they immediately eject and leave? In fact, this is the most common types of male response because most men have never had healthy role models and therefore they don't know how to behave and operate in the face of conflict and also in the face of intimacy. How many men do you know who, in times of deep intimacy with other men, they get freaked out? You see guys who can't even give a deep hug, a deep embrace. They just pat you on the back or they get nervous when you try to give them a real hug. This is a fear of intimacy. And most men who have not been exposed to healthy masculinity, they resort to these behaviors because they've never seen any other thing modeled. Where I found this being modeled the first time was around a men's group that I once attended, where men would actually stand in the face of conflict and instead of beating each other up, instead of speaking down to each other, they would actually open their hearts and speak of the emotions that were going through them and discussing their fear, discussing their anger towards each other in a way I had never seen before. And it blew my mind because I told myself, wow, every time I get angry, I either yell and scream and attack, or I avoid by walking away. And sometimes I fawn. And fawning is a term that most men have not heard before, but most men participate in. Fawning is a term called people pleasing. And it's when you're in the face of conflict and suddenly you start to be a kiss ass because you want to diminish the intensity of the experience that you're in. Many of our fathers are professional fawners. They get into conflict with their spouse or their business partner and they don't want to fight. They don't want to flight. So they resort to fawning, which is a people pleasing behavior in order to diminish challenges that are around them. So when we start to be around other men who don't fight, who don't flight, who don't fawn, and they open to the field of possibility, what we start to realize is wow, maybe there's a new way of interaction between other men and ourselves and also other women. This is what a healthy men's community is all about. It's about challenging yourself to find new behavioral patterns that you may have never experienced before. And this is why I love being a part of the Men of Means community, because every time there's a challenge, instead of resorting to the autonomic response system, which is called our nervous system, which usually asks us to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, instead, what we do is we breathe together. Imagine being in front of a man who has thoroughly offended you. And now what you do is you ask him, hey, brother, can you take a deep breath with me? Can you allow me to feel this anger that I'm feeling in this moment towards you? And I promise you that I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to beat you up. I'm not going to diminish you. But I am feeling a strong level of anger and a little bit of scared. And I'd love for you to witness me in it so that I can really own it. And I'd love for you to share that with me in this moment. The first time I experienced that with another man, it changed every cell in my body. I realized that men weren't a threat to me, that I wasn't needing to constantly protect myself around men and chase women for intimacy, and that men could actually help me up level, help me heal, help me thrive, and help me become more prosperous because they were no longer a place of diminishment. And in fact, the right man could become a place of empowerment for you. So if you've never heard of a men's community before, or maybe you've heard of them, but you don't know what they're about, it's really a human experiment in how can we feel these taboo emotions together and not react and respond in the typical way that men in society react and respond. We all know that there's war. We all know there's conflict. We all know that men are the number one cause of abuse, number one cause of incarceration, number one cause of drug abuse and sexual abuse. And we all tell ourselves that we don't want to become one of them. Yet most of us find no other way to express our emotions than to lash out, or worse yet, to isolate. How many times in your life have you experienced a very strong emotion, anger, sadness, shame, shy, jealousy, and because you didn't want to be seen as a bad person, you isolated yourself and you closed the doors, and maybe you even medicated yourself using porn, using video games, using social media, sexting, overspending, overeating, alcoholism. These are all responses to a nervous system that hasn't been well trained to stand in the face of adversity and to express itself in a way that heals. One of my favorite quotes that I like to share with men is, what you do not reveal, you do not heal. What you don't reveal, you don't heal. So when we have to isolate because we're afraid that the men around us are going to pick on us, they're going to laugh at us, they're going to abuse us, we start to isolate. And in that very isolation is where the damage happens. So if you're watching this, and whether you're part of our Men of Means community or you're just a man out there saying, wow, I never heard of these kind of things. I really encourage you to really explore many of the men's communities that are popping up around the world who are experimental communities that are challenging the norm of male interaction. We've been told that men should only interact when they're talking about women, when we're talking about money and business. And I'm here to share with you that that is so easy. It's so boring. And the new challenge for most of us men is how do we interact with each other and with women from a place of raw authenticity, sharing with each other when we're scared, sharing with each other when we're shy, and supporting each other through that shyness is where the actual bonds happen. I can't tell you how much business uh, gains, how much business growth, how much spiritual and personal growth I've had by challenging myself to become more authentic, more vulnerable, more raw, instead of becoming more stoic. You know, stoicism is a term that is used for men who are tougher, who nothing penetrates them. They go through their life becoming tougher and tougher. And you know what? These are the guys that break most easily. We've seen it in our families. Our fathers who were raised to be tough men, who never expressed their emotions, never expressed their shame, their anger, their shyness. And they oftentimes resort to alcoholism, isolation. They cheat on their wives. And these are medications for emotions that are not expressed. So, if you want to heal, you got to have the courage to reveal. And I'm sharing this with you because I once was a man who was taught to be like James Bond. James Bond is cool, calm, and collective. So, every time something really challenging happened to me in my life, whether it was a trauma, a challenge, a business disaster, I told myself that I don't want to be out of control. I don't want to be abusive. So why don't I become more reserved, more stoic, more calm? And I got to a point where I realized that my behaviors were becoming toxic. Behind closed doors, I was cheating on my girlfriend. Behind closed doors, I was addicted to porn. Behind closed doors, I was drinking, overspending, flirting with stranger women that I didn't even know, didn't even care for, because all the energy that I was trying to maintain and suppress was starting to come out sideways. And it wasn't until I found a healthy masculinity community where men challenged themselves to be vulnerable, where men had the courage to talk about their shame, where men had the strength to own their challenges and not make fun of each other, not put each other down. I'm encouraging you to find that. Maybe this video is a sign for you. And if you have already found that and you're fortunate enough to be a part of a men's community, invite brothers into it. You know how many of your friends are lost out there drinking, smoking, chasing women because the emotions that they're experiencing are way too much and they've been taught by their fathers that you got to be tough, you can't cry, and this is what's challenging and really hurting all of our families. So I invite you from my heart to yours to step into the field of courage, to share more about your emotions, to find communities of men who are willing and are strong enough to hold you in your shame, in your sadness, in your anger, and to let you know that you're not alone because all of us are going through all of these challenges. None of us are very unique in the depth of emotions that we have as human beings. God bless. I'll speak with you soon.